Hello and welcome to episode 86 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Joining me today, Steven, I gotta say, I was gonna pick two possible nicknames for you, okay? I was
Okay.
I was going to originally call you Rob Was Right Myrink because, you texted me this morning saying that, hey, what do you know? The Evil Within gets really good after you
I
get.
never said it wasn't.
Yeah, but you were kind of like, I don't know, it's not very good. The pacing's bad. And I'm like, dude, just keep playing. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better.
Yeah, but I knew it got better. We talked about that.
I know, but I was right. Uh, so that was one possible nickname for you, and then the other one I just decided on is going to be Temple Raising Myrink. As we look at the front cover of Kingdom Hearts 2.5, I'm sorry, Roman numeral 2 point alphanumeric 5 HD remix, and Xehanort's eye looks like it's about ready to pop out of its socket.
He didn't know it was Xehanort. I had to tell him that. And
I'm
this
sorry.
might be your cue that you know Robert does not read the website he writes for. Because we've been reporting on that since the first one came out and was called I.5.
Can I get a little bit of a yeah? That's maybe a little weird to have the Roman numerals and the alphanumeric in there.
Rob, it's Square Enix.
I know. At least they're not putting division signs into their games
The
right now.
Kingdom Heart. I mean, let me rephrase it. It's not Square Enix. It's Nomura's titling.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Because for as silly as that and Dream and 358 over 2 days is, the Final Fantasy 14 expansion that was just announced is called Heavensward. That's just one word and it's awesome.
That I will agree with that. That's pretty good. That's a little bit better than 2.5 HD, or I'm sorry, HD 2.5
And it's
remake.
R lowercase e all caps mix.
Oh God. Okay. I'm done making fun of this. Joining us today, we also have Kyle Geralt fanboy E Miller.
Kyle E on the boards. Hello.
Cool, cool, cool. Kyle, how you doing, buddy? We haven't had you on the podcast since E3.
Yeah, what's up with
I'm sorry.
that?
You're more than welcome to always come on. It's just you'll just be talking about Witcher, 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 Witcher. What do we got? The new trailer for the opening cinematic for Witcher 2 is sorry,
Yeah,
Witcher
yeah.
3.
Don't give away my news stories before I say them.
Sorry, we're having a freeform podcast tonight.
Considering, I mean, they pretty much only made awesome cinematic trailers.
Yep.
They're fantastic. Great music. Um, so that's gonna be a treat.
I'm very nervous about the system requirements for Witcher 3 when
My
they're
God.
announced.
Yeah.
It's going to be like this thing actually needs a T800 Cyberdyne unit in
You
order to
actually
run
just you actually have to have
Worth it.
two computers.
one computer for Geralt's hair, the other
One,
computer
one
being
computer for Geralt's hair and beard physics.
I love his beard. I really love his. I still have that T-shirt from E3 that we have with like the
Yeah.
side profile of Geralt, and my students whenever they see me in that on campus, they're like, "Wow, that is just awesome." And I said, "Yeah, I know, right? You should probably get that game when it comes out." So
I like your students.
yeah, CD Projekt Red, I'm trying to do your job for you and market The Witcher 3. Which what is that coming out? Is it February?
Yeah, late February, 26th, something like that.
Okay.
I should know the exact date,
I,
but
f- I figured you had a countdown timer on your desk right now. It was just like
I put X's in the calendar.
oh man, next year is going to be big. So many games releasing so fast. Witcher 3 right in there. It's going to be good. I feel like we're kind of hitting the low point of the year right now though. I'm kind of done with
Really?
most major
See, I
releases
think
right now.
to me, we had like a serious summer drought. Like in the summer, I didn't play many games at all. I played Divinity or Divinity Original Sin, and that was basically it. But now I feel like there's a lot coming out. I reviewed like four games this month, and I mean a lot of littler stuff. But next month we have Dragon Age,
hmm
and some non-RPGs. But
I'm looking forward to Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I have one of my students was telling me that I would really, really like Binding of Isaac, and I just decided to wait until we get the HD version with actual like real physical controls. So I'm excited for that. And Dragon Age Inquisition, every time we see it, looks pretty damn good. I think maybe Dragon Age: The Apology will make good, guys. Maybe.
See, it looks. I really think it looks pretty good. I think people forget that while Dragon Age 2 is disappointing, like I mean, I personally didn't love the first game, but it was well beloved, and like there was still like interesting things happening in Dragon Age 2.
Mhm.
It's
right,
Isabella is still a character that exists, but Um,
Yeah, yeah, she was kind of.
like I still sort of like forget that I actually had more fun playing Dragon Age 2 than 1, so I'm actually pretty excited for Inquisition.
Yeah, I just like how intricate Origins felt, and I really hope that they can replicate that. Where Dragon Age 2's biggest problem outside of respawning enemies was just that everything felt like a movie set, especially when you return to the same mansion a second time and just a different door unlocks.
Very
I just
stagey.
wasn't there like an old Twilight Zone episode about like people that would go through and like prepare the future, like car accidents and stuff, and it was like a bunch of set designers, and that's just what it felt like I was playing Dragon Age 2. Like, didn't I slaughter 10,000 people in here last week? But man, they really got the blood out of the carpet. That's actually not too bad.
Fabulous.
Oh boy. So Kyle, you're playing a lot of games. So why don't we start with you and you can talk to us about some I want to you know what game I want to know about because I have it and I haven't had a chance to fire it up. I want to know about the Vanishing of Ethan Carter.
Vanishing of Edie Carter. Okay, so this it's for those who don't know, it's like a 3D graphic adventure basically, sort of in the vein of a Heavy Rain, but it's first person. Um, and it's a really great autumn game, very atmospheric, a little bit spooky, not scary. Actually, there's one part that's legitimately kind of creepy and scary, but it has a very nice atmosphere. Um, and it's mostly story driven, not a whole lot of interaction, really simple puzzles. Looks really beautiful. They have this they essentially what they did was like they took pictures of outside and they like somehow using this technology they imported them into the game so you're not getting like textures that are tiled and repeated and you're getting like natural geographical formations and it looks fantastic. um, and
It did look very impressive when I'd seen some videos of it. It looks
yeah the
brilliant.
Yeah, I've played like an hour of it, and if nothing else, it's freaking gorgeous.
and the thing about this game though is that it's a mystery and like most mysteries there's like a twist at the end. And unfortunately, the actual twist that the game kind of revolves around, the crux of the story, is incredibly cliched. And it's like one of those narrative sins one of those things you just don't do. And I thought everybody knew that. It's a slight variation, but essentially it's the same thing. So there's that. But at the same time, the final scene, kind of apart from this twist, is actually really affecting. And some of the writing up to that point is really subtle, really minimalistic. They do a lot of things with like how characters, uh, the like character postures and facial expressions. They tell stories that way. So there is some really like subtle things, and then there's this weird like just big dumb twist. So it's kind of a weird. I know kind of messes with you. You're not sure how to feel about it.
Did
Um,
you, without going into specifics on it, did you guess the twist, or did it like come out of left field and you're just sitting there going, "Really, that was what you guys decided to go with?"
I had been. I'm kind of actually embarrassed that I didn't guess it, but because it's kind of you should guess it toward the end there. I guessed something similar to it, um, so it doesn't necessarily come out of left field, but it's just very very hokey. I guess is the best way to describe it, and it feels out of place because the rest of the story elements are like really realistic, and it's just this portrait of a kind of a damaged small family, and it's just this kind of an intimate story that's really neat, well done. And then there's this just kind of hokey genre twist that I think is kind of a misstep. But
Hmm. Did you like Gone Home? Did you even play that?
yeah, I reviewed Gone Home
Oh,
actually.
okay. Well, it
Um,
shows that I do not read actually what
yeah,
people are on the website there.
clearly don't read the website.
I want you to picture me as the guy eating cereal meme and me going, "See, I told you."
This will be your last podcast.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. But you liked Gone Home, so you do
No,
enjoy
actually,
these kind of
I
narrative-driven
I
games.
don't really like Gone Home.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I think I gave it a 75%. It's and I think it's an interesting idea, and there's some good realistic ideas in there. But to me, Gone Home is a very mainstream game, and it's a mainstream perspective of what's supposed to be an outsider story. And and for some people that will work, especially if you grew up during the time that it's supposed to sort of evoke.
Hmm.
But it's not. It didn't seem very true to life to me. But it actually, Ethan Carter has interesting parallels to Gone Home. I could make an interesting editorial.
Hmm. Okay.
But I recommend Ethan Carter if you do enjoy games like Gone Home or Dear Esther, like those kind of. And I know a lot of people don't like the walking simulator, quote unquote.
Hmm. Did
I love those kinds of games. They're just sort of they're more relaxing than I think a lot of AAA and even indie games, which are getting more and more mechanic based. Well, that's not really backed up, but a lot of mechanic based games, which I do like. I like a game that's sort of meant to be just played in one shot and just you explore and you find a story. And it's sort of it's an interactive way to basically read a book to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's clearly not for everybody because reading a book's not for everybody, but it should be.
Nicely put. Ethan Carter is definitely. I was really relaxed when I played the game, even though there's like some creepy moments and it's about like murder and stuff. Like I was just like chill through that whole game. It's
Mhm.
nice.
How long was it?
I think I have like I can actually check on Steam right now. It's really short though.
Hmm.
Let's see. I played it for. It says 2 hours here, so
Oh wow. Okay. So it's a pretty quick experience. It doesn't linger. Okay.
lingered in your mind.
Right, right. I heard some people complaining about like one area, like the mines, and it weren't very good. I saw that in a couple of reviews. Can you touch on that? Was there a section you were saying the puzzles were pretty good for the most part, but was there a section that maybe was a little bit more challenging or something? Without giving away something, that was just something that was keeping me from really jumping into the game was people all saying like collectively, yes, this section of the game sucked.
No, I wouldn't really say that.
Okay.
I don't. I don't. You might. I know what they're talking about. There's kind of a part that you have to sort of collect a certain number of things.
Hmm.
Loosely use the word collect. And if you, but no, don't. I wouldn't let that stop you. And it's really. I mean, it's so short. That section of the game is probably a half an hour at most. So.
Yeah. Well, we were talking in the pre-show warm-up a little bit, and I think we need to. I have no problem with the game being short if it's an experience that I'm enjoying and it ends before it wears out its welcome. I've been playing a little bit of Alien Isolation, and I think that game would have done better if it was a 4 to 5 hour experience that was maybe $30 instead of a 20 plus hour experience that is $60 where I've played 8 hours of it and I'm already done. Like I don't want to play anymore. I've seen what it has to offer. I'm just going through the motions. I'm repeating areas. I'm go here and fiddle with something in order to activate something over here and then go over there. I just wish it was a tighter experience, but then I wonder were they so terrified of maybe putting out a $30 game would it have had that budget moniker attached to it that would then prevent it from reaching mainstream success, if that makes sense. And a hush falls over the crowd. I'm guessing that Steven is either eating something and couldn't get in there very quickly, or
Yes,
Kyle's just nodding his head in agreement, just like, oh yes, 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 quite
I'm
yeah,
really hungry. I'm listening though.
yeah. You had
Yeah,
time to eat.
I agree. I think
I didn't have
I
time to
haven't
eat. I was
played Alien.
translating all morning.
I haven't played Alien. That's why I didn't.
Mhm.
I don't want to.
It, it's
I
it's
so
good, but
I'm sort of like I can't remember where I read an article this week on like the length of games, but like there's a certain price point at which I no longer care how long the game is.
mhm.
And I think that price point is anything that isn't $30 or less. I, for me, I look at it this way: I'm happy to pay $11 to go see a movie that lasts maybe 2 hours,
Mhm.
and I might even see it again because I'm the kind of person that does that. So I mean, if I get a game and the game lasts me 2 or 3 sittings and I paid $20, then it seems fine to me. On the other hand, you get a game that's like like Alien, which is apparently very long, or you get like a lot of RPG. Like Bravely Default's a great example. Bravely Default is a game that was made longer to make it worth more money, and I don't feel like that's a thing that I need. And there are plenty of people, and I would argue I don't necessarily agree with it wholesale as a generalization, but when I was younger and had less money, and younger players obviously have less money to spend, they want their game to last longer. Otherwise, they feel like it's not worth it. You pay your $50 in allowance to buy a game and it lasts 10 hours. You're probably pretty mad. Uh, I have the opposite issue. Well, no, I don't have the opposite. I don't need money either, but I have even less time. So when I buy something, it's like I want it to be a really good experience that frees me up to get back to other things, not something that's going to take me 500 years to finish. Because odds are good I won't finish it. If it's Bravely Default, didn't finish it, way too long. Shin Megami Tensei 4, way not fun enough.
Oh, you are so wrong. You are
So,
so wrong.
That's right.
you know, I don't care how long a game is. Like I don't want an hour long game to be $60. But on the other hand, once it's below 60, I sort of don't care.
Yeah, I'm willing to take chances on games for a lower price point. That's why I picked up Alien. It was on a sale, so I got that, and I was like, okay, I played it for 8 hours. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I still got an experience out of it. It was still pleasant. I totally get what this game is all about, and that was cool. And I also wanted to support it because I want new experiences like that game. I think it's really ballsy that a developer would try to make that hardcore of an experience in this day and age when we're kind of cutting the edges off games and making sure that everybody can beat them, everybody can play them. I think games like Alien Isolation, The Evil Within, those are kind of old school games in a lot of ways, and that they're very challenging and they're pushing you as a player. And there's something to be said for those kind of games. I don't think every game should be like that. Obviously, not every game needs to be a Souls title, but they should be. No, but there is room for there's room for
Somewhere
these.
in the distance, Derek is dying from
I
that
know
comment.
Derek just freaked out. We miss you, buddy, but Derek is just like losing it right now. Like no, but there's something to be said for games that are different experiences, and I like playing different things, trying different games. I'm trying to move outside of my comfort zone a little bit. And I just hope that we can continue to do that either with the indie scene or with these big releases that are coming out lately that yeah, Creative Assembly just wanted to make an Alien game. Who would have thought? Isn't that neat? That's the kind of thing that I'm really liking out of video gaming, and I hope when we do E3 again, we see more of those kinds of like, wow, never would have thought this would have come out. That would be really cool, not just another Call of Duty or Madden. Those games aren't bad, but I like to see new things.
I agree.
Yep. Steven, what have you been up to?
Let's see. So I actually forgot when we were pre-showing. We'll start with this because this is a newer game. Terra Battle came out, and that's Miss Walker's new mobile game. Which almost immediately I heard mobile game and I went.
I remember that. You were angry. You were actually angry with the announcement of it.
Yeah, because I'm like, hey, that's not Lost Odyssey 2. So what are you doing?
Yeah, I was upset.
But if you put that aside and you put my complete and utter open bias against mobile games, I hate them. I have no desire to play a game that is designed to monetize itself over gameplay. That's why, again, we've talked about this before. I won't belabor the point. Final Fantasy XIV is great for not going free to play because the game is designed for content and for like the player experience, not how can we bite-size this experience into something that we can sell to the player.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. On a moral standpoint, that's a perfectly legitimate way to do your game. I don't want to play a game like that. I don't. I want all my mechanics, and I want them to be dependent upon how I'm playing the game. Or I want a story, and I don't want that story to be partitioned out into how can I get you to microtransact. You want to sell me episodes? Great. But once I've paid for it, I don't want to pay anything else. And I don't want the game structured so it takes forever unless I pay money. So with that in mind, I very, very apprehensively downloaded Terra Battle, soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu, Miss Walker team behind it, lots of cool Japanese game development luminaries. And while it does have a microtransaction element to it, basically, so it's an RPG, but sort of more or less just a combat system of an RPG with cutscenes in between. And
There actually are cutscenes.
yeah, and so fighting
'Cause I didn't
story.
think there were.
Well, they're text cutscenes with artwork behind them. The cutscenes are basically the novel sections from Lost Odyssey, and even the text effects are similar.
Oh,
But
weird.
so to fight a story battle, you have to use a certain amount of stamina, and your party gains more stamina as they level up. So, you start, I think, with like 15 or 20, and it takes, 2 to 5 to fight a story battle. And the stamina recharges every 5 minutes. So, you get to a point eventually, if you do a ton of story battles in a row, you'll run out of stamina. You can pay money to recharge it, or you can just wait, or there are certain, you can level up or do certain things in the game to get more stamina. And then the grinding aspects, so there are areas you can go to that are just sort of generic battles. Those don't cost any stamina, so you can still play the game without the stupid microtransaction thing. And then it's sort of like Puzzle and Dragons or a lot of like gachapon machines in Japan where there's this element called energy. And I'm getting all the terrible stuff out of the way first. That way I can talk about the good part. Um, there's energy, which you use to hire new people to join your party. And you can either spend in-game currency, which is gold, to get like monsters and generic NPCs, or you can spend energy, which you get, from certain events. You get them certain milestones in the story, which lets you hire new characters that are like, drawn characters with a name and a personality. Um, so far, I have not felt at any point that I had to do any of that because they sort of ration out the amount of energy you get in such a way that you can continually get new party members just by playing the game. Not as quickly, obviously, as if you went and spent $20 and just kept buying characters, but fast enough that I don't feel like my experience of the game has been hurt since the characters don't have a personality in the game. And that's to say, your chapter, you get a world map, and the production on it is great. Like the artwork is fantastic, the music is awesome. So you'll pick a chapter, and then there's like a set of battles in each chapter, and it works a lot like a tactical RPG. And so you get into the fights, and your characters are all represented as tiles on this grid. And so it's sort of this like the basest abstraction of a turn-based RPG, but designed in such a way that it actually really suits the mobile platform because you can play it all with one thumb. And basically the gist of the combat is that you'll have enemy tiles and your tiles on this grid, and if you surround an enemy tile or a group of enemy tiles with two of yours, you'll attack them. And where this starts to get more strategic is that when you can only move one tile per turn, but if you move the tile you're moving across another tile, it moves to where you were before. And you have a certain amount of time once you touch a tile to execute your turn. So what you'll do, what you'll find that you're doing is that you're sitting there looking at the structure of your tiles and saying, okay, how can I move one tile as quickly as possible to get everybody where I need them to be for the best strategic attack? And so at first that depth is not really apparent. And then you realize that when you're on the same horizontal or vertical plane, like, for example, if you're in the same row or column, when you attack as another one of your allied tiles, that allied tile will also contribute to the attack. So what it turns into is you're sitting there on your turn looking at the board, really doing strategizing, and it's really cool because then you hit it and it's like, then you get that sort of immediacy where you're like, all right, I gotta move as quickly as I can to set up my attack. And then you do it, and then you get to watch, it's like attack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all like the spells come out and magic comes out. And it ends up being this really cool thing that I don't think is possible elsewhere, and that's why I ended up liking the game. Because you have this strategy battle system with levels and stuff, because you gain XP after fights and your units get stronger and learn new abilities, and you can give them new jobs, which sort of expand their ability set and expand their utility in terms of positioning and how you would hit stuff on the grid. And it sort of combines that strategy element with a quick, mobile-friendly, like I want to sit down and play for 10 minutes, on my phone of fighting battles. And it's really engaging. And so the leveling aspect is there, but it's also very heavily dependent on your strategy because you could sit there, because there's, like in Fire Emblem, there's a weapon triangle. There's bows, spears, and swords. And all of your units have that distinction, or they're a magic unit or a healing unit. So you're kind of sitting there really thinking about the party you're bringing to every battle. Because, you could fight a battle and fail and be like, I fought all guys with swords and all I had was guys with spears, which is strong against swords. So, you're thinking about the party you're bringing. And then once you get there, you're really thinking about the positioning of your units to win the battles. So I'm actually a fan of the game. It's free, again. So I've sort of been recommending it to everybody, even people I know that don't like mobile games. Because, again, I hate mobile games. And I've been playing it a lot. Like I'm on chapter 8, and I would say I've gotten a serious number of hours out of a game that I basically haven't paid for. And the story is sort of minimalist, but it's presented in basically a format that is the Lost Odyssey novel sections, but only like 1 or 2 pages of text. And, it's the sort of thing where if you're really into strategy gameplay and like the more cerebral aspects of a puzzle game. I think it's a fantastic fusion of those things. I really I can't say enough good things about the combat itself. It's just the kind of game that has very little crap in the way. It's just like you get in and you're fighting battles, and they're really really strategic and really fun.
Hmm. Is this only available on mobile platforms right now?
So they're doing this thing called the download starter, which is
Hmm.
sort of like a Kickstarter, but every milestone the game gets for every 100,000, they're adding things to it. So like they hit 200,000 and Nobuo Uematsu added a new boss theme. They hit 400,000 and a famous artist did a character. And the highest download goal is that what's his name? Guy that did the concept art for Final Fantasy 1 through like 7. Uh,
You mean Amano?
yeah, Amano's going to add a
You forgot.
character.
Oh, that's right. You're not a big Amano fan. Sorry, I forgot. I
Amano's
forgot.
going to add a character to it. But so you have all these cool characters that are designed by famous artists in the Japanese gaming scene. Um, but some of the milestones are like we'll release a soundtrack for everybody, and one of the milestones is we will release a Vita version, and it's easily going to get there because like in like a week of being out, it's at like 900,000 or something. So um, they're going
Wow.
to add a Vita version. But this is the thing is that this is not a game that would be improved by buttons. This is sort of like if you played the first Puzzle Quest. Puzzle Quest was completely better on DS than it was on PSP because it was a game that sort of expected you to be able to touch the screen, and you wouldn't be able to play it quickly enough because of so again when you go to make your move you basically have a meter that rapidly drains, and once that drains your turn is over, and if you haven't moved everyone into position you won't attack.
Hmm.
So you could not possibly play it with an analog stick or a D-pad because you couldn't move the way you have to move your tile to slide across other tiles and move around the board to get things where they need to be couldn't be done with an analog stick. So it would probably not work on the DS because the screen's too small. But I could see it. Like the Vita version is a good idea, I think, because that's a system where you could touch the screen to move it around. But even then, I actually, and this is sort of sacrilege for me, I actually think I'd rather play it on my phone than the Vita because it's the kind of game where you sit down, you play it for 20 minutes, and then you take a break for a few hours and the just the structure of it is like if I take out my Vita, I want to play a lengthier game or something with buttons or something that's really going to be like I have to sit down for an hour and play this. Versus this is like very much well suited to these are quick battles that take a few minutes each. Um, so I think it's really well suited to the platform. But yeah, that was a roundabout way to say it's coming to Vita.
Hmm. Okay, cool. I'm mildly interested. I always want to know what the original creator of Final Fantasy is up to.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer that we're not getting Lost Odyssey 2. I know some people really, really like that game, but maybe this is a good thing for Mistwalker. I think that they were kind of pushed out there as these are the guys who are going to make the next great Final Fantasy or JRPG for the Xbox 360.
And then they did.
And all right, if
Lost Odyssey was Final Fantasy and everything but name.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, down to having two twins in the game that, it's just repeating old stuff. But, maybe that's good. Maybe that's a good thing. If it played well, it didn't. I don't think it really grabbed audiences the way that Microsoft was hoping. Was that for Xbox or Xbox 360? 360, right?
Xbox 360, and
Okay.
it didn't grab audiences the way they were hoping because Microsoft thought that the big money was in JRPGs at the time, and then they figured out it was in Call of Duty, and then they were like, "Oh, we're done with
Yeah,
JRPGs."
Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty. But it could be really, really good for these guys to have some kind of success, to kind of get a foothold again. They're talented dudes. I mean, say what you will about Lost Odyssey, that game does have a following, and it could have been something really, really nice. I just don't think gamers were that interested in that at that point. So maybe this is good for them. Maybe this will let them kind of earn it a little bit more, and we might see something better out of them in the future.
Well, the only issue with that is that their last three games have been mobile games, so I don't know that they're going to be going back to console development
Or
anytime
they
soon.
just keep making mobile games.
That's in at least in the Japanese market. That's sort of where that's the only expanding sector at the moment.
Hmm.
Like console gaming is dropping off, handheld gaming is dropping off a little bit, not quite as much. Actually, no, I can't corroborate that second fact, but console gaming is definitely dropping. So the money is definitely in mobile in Japan right now.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool. So Terra Battle, interesting. Go check it out. And apparently you don't have to pay for it, which is nice. Always a plus. Derek, what up? Oh God. I forgot he wasn't here. I'm just so used to it. Kyle, what else do you have to talk to
If
us
you read
about?
the website, you might know the names of the people who live
Would
there.
you stop? Like, you guys just now you're just all being mean to me. I am tired, and lots been. Shut up, Kyle. What else have you been playing?
Grimrock 2,
Okay, tell me about Grim Rock. I don't even know what that is.
fantastic. You don't even know what it is.
I don't even know what Grim Rock is.
This is not read the website.
I
Legend of
don't.
Grimrock.
I don't read the website. Remember?
You read Steam
The
though.
Legend. So the Legend of Grimrock 2, which is the one I just played, is a sequel to the Legend of Grimrock. Obviously, it's a PC dungeon crawler, very much inspired by the dungeon crawlers of old, which I actually really did. I didn't grow up on those. That's not why I like Grimrock. It's nostalgia has nothing to do with it. I just think it's a fantastic um, formula. Just the between the atmosphere, the combat, the leveling up, just it's great. And the second one does everything, pretty much everything that the first one does, and it does it more. It does it better. It's bigger. Um, just it's so the first one was in one massive dungeon, but the second one is on an island. So they took it out of the dungeon and put it really in an open world. It's pretty non-linear. Um, in the beginning, it's linear for a few hours, and then you get to you get to basically the center of the island, and you can essentially go in about 2 to 4 different directions, and it just works out really well because let's say you go to the bog and you get stuck because there's an enemy you can't beat or there's a puzzle that you're frustrated with. So you go to the ruins instead. And while you're in the ruins, you think, oh, I know how to solve that puzzle now because you're thinking about it. And you just, you needed the time to step away from it. So then maybe you get stuck in the ruins. So you can go back to the bog, solve that puzzle, and then continue on that way. And it's all balanced really well. I never got to an area and I was absolutely overwhelmed by the enemies. Um, and none of it's all pretty equally difficult. So it's really well balanced, which is awesome considering there's only like, I think, 2 main designers to it and some playtesters. But yeah, they just do so many creative and imaginative things with the open world, and I don't want to say too much about it because essentially anything is a spoiler. But you'll be surprised by what you are capable of, what your characters can actually do, and what enemies can do, and what is in the island. Like there's some nasty surprises.
Cool. Cool. Uh. Hmm.
I liked the first one. I thought it looked cool, and I liked the combat, but I sort of just never played it. Like I bought it and then was like, okay, and then I played it for 30 minutes and stopped. I'm very excited to try this one out. I really like the island setting, and I love the idea that they've sort of incorporated that puzzle element. Because as we know, I really love those kinds of puzzles. So to have that with this sort of old school dungeon crawler gameplay sounds awesome.
Yeah, Steven, I think you'd like it. If it's definitely one of those games where, like, even if you didn't like the first one that much, try it out because it's pretty different. If and I think the first one, just the single dungeon, kind of repetitive. I think that could definitely turn people off. And this one is anything but repetitive. It's constantly surprising. There's new stuff around every corner. And yeah, the puzzle elements are just astounding. I mean, I was so frustrated with this game. I hated it. I was cursing it. Um, but after you figure it out, it's like amazing. You
Mhm.
feel you feel awesome, and it definitely has that kind of. It reminds me of Dark Souls 2 in that there are certain paths that you can't go down, and you're not sure why you can't go down them. You're not sure if you need an item or if you're just missing something, and it kind of has that like interlocking puzzle box kind of feel, and I just love that kind of thing.
Well, when you say it like that, I'm thinking more like the Legend of Zelda or the Batman games where you get an item or an upgrade that allows you to go down a new path. Is that kind of what you're talking about here, Kyle? Or
No, it's more like so like in Dark Souls, there's like the petrified person, okay?
okay.
And you need like an item to unpetrify them. It's more like that. More like where certain doors you need an item,
Hmm.
or sometimes you just need information. Like you'll need the knowledge that's in a scroll somewhere else.
Hmm.
So it's not like you get an item and it opens up
Hmm.
new paths because of its ability. But it's more organic than that, I guess.
One thing I was thinking about the other day, and you bring it up with this game, and I was thinking about it a little bit as I was playing The Evil Within, but so it's not me trying to segue into that, but I'm starting to like games that kind of have hidden depth. You know what I mean? Like you're playing a game and you think that you've kind of figured out every way that it plays. Like, oh, okay, I shoot this guy, I do this thing. But I'm starting to like games that give me a lot of tools and they just let me naturally figure out how to do it. I thought the first BioShock did a great job of that. Like, here's a ton of tools, do what you want with them, figure out strategies. Like at one point, Steven was talking about how he beat an enemy in The Evil Within, like laying trap mines for them to kind of cover his bases. And I was like, that is a really good idea. And I didn't think of that. Like that, I'm really liking games that give you the resources as a player and then just kind of back away and see what kind of ideas you come up with. It might not be exactly what the developers had in mind, but isn't it cool when a game just kind of lets you do your thing, like figure out how to beat it any way you want? I actually think Witcher 2 was pretty good about that too.
And that because it's almost like a little surprise. And if a game can surprise you after you've played hundreds of games, then that's something special.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. You know what I really want out of a dungeon simulator, and it's one of the reasons why I want to talk to the Darkest Dungeon guys again, and I think we're getting closer to release for that game. I just like the management style of like a dungeon crawler, like having to manage the health of your characters and their weapons, and with that game you're gonna have the insanity effects and stuff, and making sure that they have good mental health. I really like that kind of stuff. I like the stuff that makes my party feel more human in a way, if that makes sense. Not just okay, do
Yeah,
we have enough ammo to get through this? How's your health doing? I like those intricacies, those little payoffs here
yeah,
and
I like
there that make
this.
yeah, makes your party
Grimrock
feel more
has
real.
Grimrock doesn't have a ton of that. They do have hunger
Hmm.
and some like injuries and stuff like that, and health, obviously. Um, so there's a little bit of that with Grimrock too.
Cool, 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 cool. And I think you have one more game to talk about, Kyle, to put you back on the spot again right away.
Um, well, I played Neverending Nightmares. There's not a ton to say about that. You can read the review. But I just finished Costume Quest, and we'll have a review up shortly. Costume Quest 2, actually,
Hmm.
which was very not as good as the original, and the original is pretty flawed. Just really simple, repetitive, and honestly, I felt it was kind of cheap, kind of rushed.
Oh, really?
Um,
Is that a Double Fine game?
yeah,
Okay. Do we have any word on? Isn't there like another episode of Broken Age that's supposed to come out at some point, or is
yeah.
that
Whatever
done?
happened to that, Steven? Do you know?
So I keep pretty close tabs on it. They haven't announced it strictly yet, but they are working on it and have been sort of talking about when it's coming. And it sounds like they're aiming for like early 2015.
Okay.
Which
Did
is a
anybody
shame because I want it now.
play the Hyper Light Drifter free weekend? They had like a free beta week of it. Did anybody play that or no?
Oh, I had no idea they did that. No, I
Yeah,
played it at E3 and thought it was neat.
Yeah, I really like what I played of that. There's just so many. Like I need an easier way to keep tabs on all these indie games. Like there was been of course it's October, so there's been tons of like, here are the top 15 upcoming horror titles, and most of them I was like, yeah, I'd give that a shot. That gets back to what Steven was talking about. Like, if the barrier of entry is a low price point, I'll readily pick something up just to give it a whirl, just to give it a try. And so, but trying to keep track of all these indie titles and when they come up, it can be kind of tough. Like, you guys remember Routine? Like, I'm still waiting for
no.
Routine to come out. That's like the kind of Amnesia in space by this studio that's focused in on like permadeath, and it takes place on this lunar base. It looks phenomenal. They've said nothing for almost a year, and I'm like, I'd really like to
Well,
know more about that.
well,
Like,
to an extent too, these are also developers that don't have PR teams, and like
exactly,
they're
exactly.
they're sort of hunkered down building the game, so it's like they don't have time to be like, today we worked on this. It's like, no, I have to go work on it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess the only thing that I was playing outside of some horror games for the month of October was I'm still trying to play Wasteland 2, and I am just
Z.
I want to. I don't agree with your assessment there. And I know that I'm the minority here. You guys aren't really digging on Wasteland 2. I like it. I just find it an absolute chore to play at times. I feel like I'm herding cats, it's not a very pleasant UI experience, and I didn't feel that way with Divinity. Like for all my problems with Divinity, I didn't feel like the game was fighting me when it comes to like its user interface and stuff.
I think it sort of comes from that old school design to it. Like again, one of the reasons I'm not a fan of Wasteland is that I feel like it's just checking boxes, and one of those boxes is not necessarily a box, but so the old Fallout was very you have to click on 50 million things to do stuff. And that was fine in that age of development, but UI has sort of come further since then. And so for me, I was sort of hoping Wasteland 2 would feel more modern with that kind of old school complexity to the systems underlying it. Whereas it's very much we have an old UI, we have older systems, so it's like to do anything you have to click 400 different things. And that's not inherently a problem to me because I like having control, but there are ways to give you the exact same amount of control without requiring that you click and click and click and click and click.
Yeah, whenever I have to open up a box or something, and the game is landmine crazy and trap crazy to the point of just like, okay, here's another box I need to open up. Okay, get all my party over here. Have the one person with lockpick go up. Okay, you're gonna pick the lock. All right, but now I have to bring everybody back over because you can't transfer items unless they're really close to you sometimes. It's stuff like that that is just making it irksome to play. Like it's just like I'm fiddling is my word of the day apparently. I'm just fiddling with the keyboard and the mouse to the point where it's not fun right now. It's making it very difficult to play. As silly as that may sound, it's kind of like how you guys remember Kingdoms of Amalur. One of the best things that game did was the junk button, like being able
Junk.
to just
Yep.
be like, well, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, and that just made it so it was so much easier to go to shops and sell stuff. So you're not sitting there at this inventory screen for a long period of time.
It's sort of like how Diablo 3 and the most recent patch added the ability to instantly break down all your items of a certain type.
Yep,
You
yep.
know, it
It's an
cuts you from being
interesting.
there in a minute or two to I click 3 buttons and then I'm back to playing.
See, I think there's an interesting balance that needs to be achieved between automation and uh, manual.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of the times AAA and modern games are associated with things being automated
Hmm.
or very streamlined. And I agree, I don't like that either. But then I think some stuff is too far on the other end, where it's like this is inconvenient because it's cool, and I mean they take it too far. I think.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying, and one of the games that is jumping out in my mind again, and I'm glad Kyle's here because we can rag on this game like crazy. Dragon's Dogma was probably the nastiest, the
It is
absolute
so bad.
that the nastiest UI I have ever seen in a game. Like it
That
was
game
just
is
baffling.
probably the sloppiest game I have ever played.
The popularity of Dragon's Dogma baffles me as much as the continued popularity of Monster Hunter. I just don't get like again, there's the argument, well, you just don't get the controls. No, a game shouldn't have obtuse controls as a barrier to entry. That's what's wrong with a lot of advanced fighting games. I shouldn't have to hyper back cancel into my sword attack to jump on the dragon's head while I'm using my combo meter to burst rocket. It's just stupid.
Well, that's the depth that we were talking about a few minutes ago. When there's hidden depth in the game, there's like tactical. I think I like
Okay,
tactical
that's
depth.
true. Yes,
Yeah.
and those games certainly have that depth, but I don't like the way they input it. Although I haven't played a Monster Hunter since the first one on PlayStation and the PSP one, so
I'm just gonna start calling the evil within Twee. Am I okay to do that or Tau? I'm just gonna call it Twee. I'm
that's a
just
little
gonna
twee of you.
I'm gonna call it Twee,
I
and Twee is awesome in
don't
that.
think the Evil Within is Twee though, so I don't know if you can call it that.
Shut up.
Yeah.
But in
It's
Twee,
tweh, I suppose.
is it Twee? Is it no? Because then you would have the W before it doesn't really work either way. I hate all of you. I really do. Okay, anywho, in the Evil Within, I'm just tired of saying the Evil Within all the time. You get these bolts that like freeze people. And I was using those as kind of like a grenade eventually, where I would huddle up in a corner or I would kind of run around the environment and get a bunch of people following me and then freeze all of them and then just start whacking the crap out of them to burst them. And that was like a hidden gameplay design there. Like that was something that was kind of nice for me to try, and I learned it myself. There was another time where I was held up in a building and I used what Steven was talking about, like a landmine by the door, and then I waited at the other door. My landmine tripped. Okay, now I know people are at the other door. That kind of I don't like to say emergent because all of a sudden that got a negative connotation a few years ago because it was a buzzword. It was a checkbox that everybody was putting into their games. But I like that sort of thing. And you look at a game like Dragon Age 2, I felt like they were trying to streamline certain aspects of that game by, not having armor for your party members. Like you couldn't outfit every single aspect of your party. Some gamers really, really like that. When I'm playing Wasteland 2 and I have to upgrade every skill on all five of my now six of my party members right now, that's getting a little frustrating. Like now I'm not enjoying the level up process. I get to a level up and I'm like, oh god, now I got to sit here and put all my skill points in, and it's feeling very unfocused. But at the same time, the developers are hearing that gamers want that micromanagement. They want to have that sort of stuff. So it's like
I do want to
constantly
have that. I
balance.
I do want to have that.
Yeah, but
A
you have
game
to
isn't
balance
good
it.
though. A bad sign is when leveling up becomes no fun because that's always like that's like the best part of a lot of games. It's like it's supposed to
Yeah,
be
like sorry, good.
it's supposed to be like the reward, and when that's tedious, you
Yeah,
not
and
Yeah,
going.
like that's a great way to describe it. Like there are some games, like for example, let me think of a terrible game, Dungeons and Dragons Daggerdale, terrible game.
yeah,
Level up, meaningless, stupid, boring, not fun. Getting new skills isn't even fun in that game. Versus like, and again, we'll use one of my recent favorites. Leveling up at Divinity is awesome because there are so many choices you can make on your character, and at least in my experience, you hit those certain thresholds and it's like all of a sudden you have this new spate of spells or abilities available to you. And then even when you've maxed out, most games tend to be like you reach the sort of upper high level of a skill and then it's like, well, nothing interesting is going to happen now. And up to that point in Divinity, 5 is the cap for a skill. You've had a limit. Like I can only know 10 skills of this type. Then you get to the max and you can suddenly have all of the spells in that school.
mhm.
So it's like even when you get to the max level, now all of a sudden you have even more tools that you might not have been using because you chose not to. That makes it exciting, and it puts you in a situation where in most games I'm like I just want to dump all my points in to get stronger. In Divinity, there were often times where I would wait on a level to get that like extended gratification of like, yeah, I didn't get anything this level. I got maybe a new spell, but I saved my skill points, and then by saving them, now I got something crazy good at the next level.
I like where you just went there because I was thinking about that. I can sometimes find that to be very frustrating. Like the promise of something down the line, like I could use this skill point right now, but once I hit level 10, I open up these new skills. Why don't I hold on to that skill point and use it later? If the game gives me that sort of feedback right away, I can do that sort of thing. But I really liked leveling up in Fallout 3 in New Vegas because you immediately got a perk and you always wanted to have that perk. Like as soon as you leveled up, it was a big deal. You now had something that gave you like, plus 20% to headshots. Like that was an awesome feeling. I really like that. If the game communicates it to me well that okay, you can save your skill point right now because down the line you get to do this, then I'm okay with it. There's also this weird metagame thing going on with Wasteland 2 where when you level up, you instantly heal on all but the hardest difficulty, I think. You instantly heal. So I'm actually saving level ups for when I need them to heal my party. I think a couple of my characters actually have gained like almost 2 levels. But I'm still waiting around because like medkits are sometimes in such short supply. It starts being this really weird metagame moment of just like I don't want to level up because I'm not going to reap all the benefits of leveling up. It's like when you get a green and a yellow herb in Resident Evil 4, and you're like, well, I could use this now and gain all my health and get like a little boost, or I could get a red herb and use it all when I need to later. That's kind of a weird metagame thing that starts to. I don't know how I feel about it. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't.
I usually don't. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I usually don't like to have to make that decision. And I've started just like not caring, and just I've been more of an impulsive gamer lately, or just like I'll use the items, and like the old in like old Final Fantasies, you'll end up with like a ton of really powerful items at the end of the game, and you never use them.
Yep.
You'll have like 99 elixirs and a bunch of other stuff.
But you
But I've
never know when you
started,
needed them, Kyle. You never know
Yeah,
when you needed them.
I've actually sort of gotten out of the saving my items phase too. Like, when I played Resident Evil 4 the first time, although now it's different because I know the game so well, but like it's like I got to stockpile everything, and I never ever want to use an awesome weapon unless I have to. And I'm playing like the Evil Within or Suikoden 2, and Suikoden 2, it's like, hey, you got this really cool healing item, use it right now. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, a boss got me to low HP, fully heal, I win.
Yeah, I like games that force you to use some stuff. Like I used all my Magnum rounds in Twee, and I was like, okay,
Don't tell me what the guns are. I didn't know it was a Magnum.
yeah, there's a Magnum, and it's really
Stop!
good. It's
Stop!
really good.
Of course, it's
It's
Magnum
it's a
voice.
Magnum. I mean, come on, dude. It's not the broken butterfly, but come on.
That was another thing they did really badly in the pacing in that game is they gave you bullets for guns before you had the guns, and then you mysteriously got two of them at the same time.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was lame.
yeah.
But
The beginning of Twee is not very good, but it gets better.
it does.
So you kind of snuck one in there on us, Steven, a little game that you have been playing
At
constantly whenever I text you.
long last, I have been playing Suikoden 2. Backstory, I'm sure I've mentioned this before. First Suikoden I played was 3. I've absolutely hated it. I got it when it came out. I heard great things, and I just despised it. I hated the combat. I hated the music. Well, the battle music. The rest of the music was pretty good.
This was Suikoden 3, correct?
Yes, this was the
Okay.
first PS2 one, and it was the one that had multiple main characters that you sort of switch between. And the joke with Suikoden for me so far has sort of been like every time I say I'm playing 2, I get 30 people going, well, this is my preference for the series, and they're all different. Everyone's like, I think 1's better than 2. I think 5 is the best. I think 3 is the best. 4 is underrated. Yada, yada, yada. The only thing that seems consistent is that people don't like 4, except for the people who do. Uh, so I've also played 5, and I liked 5. I didn't beat it because I lost interest or something or went to college. I don't remember. But I want to go back and play it now because 2 is one of those games that's sort of like it's like a unicorn at this point. You can't get it digitally anywhere unless you live in Japan. Came out. There was a PSP release of it that never got released here. It was sort of a cleaned up compilation of 1 and 2 on PSP, and it never came out here, which is a shame because it looks gorgeous. But this is that sort of the unicorn of gaming. You just can't play it, and it was a giant pain for me to track it down. But now that I'm finally playing it, when I first started, I sort of was like, I think I mentioned the Rob metric before. I go to myself after playing an hour of a game, I go, would Rob hate this game? And like I found that in my real life, I've started looking at games thinking, what complaints is Rob going to have about this game? And so I'm playing Suikoden, and I'm like, well, the game starts out slow. Rob's going to be mad that it's boring. Uh,
Yeah, that's not very
no,
nice.
no, hold on, hold on. This is meant to be. I use you as a good critical lens to make myself more critical because I tend to be, except when I'm not. I tend to be a little bit more optimistic on things. But so I'm playing the introduction, and it actually once it clicked for me that this is an older game and the pacing is a little bit older in terms of you know you're sort of in an extended series of you have to go exactly where someone tells you for the first maybe hour or two. Um, and then there's sort of it opens up a lot where it's like you can kind of go to these cities in any order. There is a linear narrative you need to follow, but then there are times where it's like you have to go here and you have to go here, and then there's a time where it's like, hey, go recruit some people for us, and it's just like, hey, go explore the world map and meet people and see their stories. And the more I play it, the more I really love it. At first, the combat system seems sort of basic. It's just you physical attack. You have a rune. Each character can have 3 runes on their head, their hands, or their forehead, or their left and right hand. Some characters can't use every slot. Animals can't use equipment in certain ways. But you hear all these things about the series, like, oh, it's the 108 Stars of Destiny. The bad guy is so dark in Suikoden 2. And this is the rare case where I really sort of feel like a lot of the hype I've heard is very merited, meritorious. The combat is very fast, especially for a game that came out when it did. Battles end in matter of seconds. There's an auto battle option for when you just want to attack. Enemies don't take 50 million hits to kill. There's not a huge amount of grinding required. It sort of has that Chrono Cross aspect of we have a lot of characters, although it has way more than Chrono Cross. There's the 108 Stars of Destiny, which is sort of part of the Suikoden mythology. And so there's lots of playable characters. And some of them are better fleshed out than others. You'll get a character who's like a samurai passed out from hunger in a town, and if you spend a bunch of money buying him food, he'll join you. And since then, he hasn't said anything, but he looks cool. Then you'll get characters who are involved with the plot in sort of arcs, like with Final Fantasy Tactics. When you have the Mustadio arc, where he's an important character, and then he sort of disappears. But it's also like Chrono Cross, where the people you choose to have in your party do have dialogue during cutscenes, and it's sort of their dialogue. But it's really been kind of it has this like weird charm that is just, it feels very like more heartfelt than, it's hard to articulate, but basically what I've been saying is that this game it has what most modern JRPGs lack, which is that most modern JRPGs here's a really over elaborate combat system and a ridiculous amount of fan service and a battle arena because you need side quests. Suikoden is very much a game that sort of, the experience of playing the game is the enjoyable part. You get invested in the character relationships. The music is just really great. The sprites, there are so many different kinds of sprites. Like, it amazes me because the sort of trajectory of games I played was like Final Fantasy VI and stuff, and Phantasy Stars, where there aren't that many custom sprites for the characters. It's like they have their hands in the air sprite for celebrating, and then they have their walking sprite. And in Phantasy Star 4, when he did the sword moves, that was crazy because it was different sprites. But in this case, it's like there's sprites for every character has a sprite for eating. They have a sprite for hugging, and like it's not like an awkward, weird hug. Like there's a sequence where your main character's best friend is sort of comforting this little girl whose parents have been killed in a war, and like it's just this honest and really hard to sort of convey sense of like legitimacy to the emotions that they're conveying, despite the terrible translation. Like, it's sort of hard to articulate, but this is a game that's sort of about its characters, and it has flaws, but it's also about the story of the world. And I know we had this conversation a while back, where it's like, is this game about the story of the world, or is it the story of characters? Chrono Cross is the story of the world and Surge and very few characters. Suikoden is sort of about both because it manages to do that really narrow balancing act of, this is a personal story about your character and his sister and his best friend and the people around them, but it's also about all these other small stories that you encounter and sort of resolve. But then it's also this story of this war happening in your homeland where this crazy dude named Luca Blight is like murdering children and burning down villages because he's just an asshole. It's really fantastic. I have a lot of good things to say about it. It's got the sort of side quest thing that I miss, even from like my favorite RPGs lately, like Persona 4 has side content, but it still sort of all just boils down to different ways to fight battles, or different secret boss battles, and I it's that weird sort of X factor that I think is lacking from a lot of modern RPGs, where the side content is experience. Like, in Suikoden, you could walk off to a town that you went to earlier if you heard a rumor in another town of like, hey, here's an example. There's you go to a town, there's a bridge in this town, and you leave, and while you're in the next town, you hear some guy who's like, I heard that the town over there was like a bunch of guys attacking women on the bridge. What a jerk. And so if you go and fill your party full of women characters and cross the bridge, you get jumped, and your dude, you end up having this entire small storyline with this mercenary who shows up and starts like kicking the crap out of the guys who are attacking women, and then you get a new party member if you let her join, or you can tell her no. And there's tons of little moments like that where it's like there's tiny just story beats that could get you a character, or they could get you a new person to go to your castle who can now like blacksmith stuff for you, or somebody who can build an elevator in your castle. Like, if you have this weird funny conversation with like a mad doctor, he'll end up joining you and he'll go build an elevator in your castle so you can get around it faster. It's just all kinds of stuff like that is really hard to put my finger on, and I wouldn't be able to even tell you what about it is that I like so much, just that it's what I feel like most JRPGs lack nowadays.
I have two questions. Okay.
Sure.
You ready?
Ready.
First, should you play Suikoden 1 before you play Suikoden 2?
So, I did not. A lot of people say you should, because it's sort of, I guess, the history, as I understand it, is that the creator of Suikoden 2 wanted to make that game, but then he realized that it was too ambitious, so they went and they made Suikoden 1, which sets up almost everything in Suikoden 2. It sets up the world. You get a lot of the same party members to the point where you transfer your save data and their levels will transfer. Um, to an extent, it's a little balanced. There are villains that get set up in Suikoden 1 that you get the resolution of them in 2. And that's not to say I've also heard that 1 is a complete storyline, but like there's a recurring bad guy who appears in the first one and you defeat him, but then it turns out it's a little more complicated than that and he shows up again in 2. And there's a lot of that stuff I've sort of been reading. The protagonist from the first Suikoden appears in 2 as a recruitable party member. And if you imported your save data, he's got the name you gave him in the first one. But there's this whole side plot that you can't do if you didn't do the first one. And I may have used the Game Shark in order to flag my save that I did play the first one because I wanted to. Because I just, I don't have time to play it twice. So I've heard from a lot of people that it's worth playing. I did not, and I don't feel like I've missed anything. But I do get the sense that there is a lot of history because there are characters who will meet up and be like, oh man, it's been a long time. How's it going? And then I'm like, oh yeah, they must know each other. It's not the sort of thing where you don't know what's going on at all because the game is self-contained. But it's that sort of thing where I'm like, I think I'd appreciate. It's like Shadow Hearts 1 and 2. You don't need to play Shadow Hearts 1 to play 2, but you'll appreciate who Alice is a lot more in 2 if you've played 1.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question is, how do we get this thing to America?
I don't know. Ask, what's the thing? The Suikoden Revival Project. They've been trying for a while. Konami's Twitch stream was playing it recently, and it's just, I don't know what it is. I've been pretty down on Konami lately. Their whole we want the COD money, so we're gonna make Metal Gear a big franchise. And I'm like, you guys realize that you are never, ever, ever going to do COD money with Metal Gear ever. And your yearly soccer spin-offs are not going to replace you abandoning all of your classic franchises. Castlevania's not getting a game for a couple of years. We all know that.
Oh, really? I thought we might get another one. I mean, wasn't Lords of Shadow 2 just welcomed with... Okay, I'm going to stop with the cynicism
Yeah,
there.
let's just stop. And then,
That was mean. I'm sorry.
the Suikoden series is like, hey, we can't make any money off that, so it's gone. I'm a little down on Konami right now because I do think, and I'm sure they'll come around like a lot of other developers have, because everybody for a while had that rush of, we got to do COD money. Square Enix did it, Capcom did it, and they're all sort of learning that you can't get COD money by abandoning everything that you are known for and changing what you are known for to suit what you think is an audience that doesn't want to play your game anyway.
Yeah.
People who play Call of Duty, and this isn't a blanket statement and not true to everybody, the general crowd of people who are buying Call of Duty and not other games are not buying Final Fantasy, and they never are going to.
Yeah. It's
a little
really
bit overlap, but
it's really disappointing to me because Konami was one of I think Konami and Capcom were two giant companies in the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 days, and they kind of lost themselves a little bit in the PlayStation 3 era. They kind of there were good games scattered about here and there. I don't think Lords of Shadow 1 was an awful game. It's very poorly paced, but it has good moments. Resident Evil 5 looks pretty good when you hold it up to Resident Evil 6 now, doesn't it? I mean, there's
I
good
enjoyed
games.
Resident Evil 5, but it's also sorry, it was sort of anecdotal to your point, but yeah.
But it's just a shame that it's like they didn't quite know how to transition to the HD generation. And now people are clamoring for these games. They really want them, but there's these unrealistic expectations about how much they're going to cost, and this, is it worth it to try to make it? We're still sitting around. Kim actually wrote a really nice thing over at Game Informer about Dragon Quest. Kim Wallace, former RPG fan staff, and she talked about how. Thank you, Wesley. Talked about how Dragon Quest VII, that 3DS remake, people are clamoring for it, but we're probably not going to get it because it's not selling the kind of numbers that Square Enix is interested in. And
what's weird about that too is I was sort of going to argue that I think Indie and Kickstarter has started to show the bigger developers that it's okay to have part of your revenue stream be a small game that did reasonable numbers. Manage your budget and expectations and the amount of effort and time you put into a game. And if it doesn't do 10 billion copies, it can still be a success. And, look at Ubisoft did Child of Light, and then they did the war game. I can't remember what it's
Valiant
called.
Hearts, yeah.
Valiant Hearts. And those games were sort of well received. And, I doubt they cost as much money as an Assassin's Creed did. And I doubt they made as much money than Assassin's Creed did. But that's still a source of revenue. And, you have to think about this. These companies are not your friend. They're companies, no matter how good their social media manager is. And, they could be doing what they're, like Sony generally is seen lately as sort of doing what players want them to do. it's still a company. They still need to do things that make them money. And that's sort of like I point to Namco Bandai as this. They've sort of figured out the exact amount of money to spend on a Tales localization to get it to make money. Is it doing the numbers of, a Final Fantasy or a Call of Duty? No, but it's not designed to do that. It's designed to appeal to people who like to play traditional chicken and potatoes comfort food JRPGs. And,
Yeah.
with the exception of Tales of Excelia being incredibly mediocre in every way, even among Tales games, I love Tales games, but it's just bad. Uninspired, not bad. You know, you have to release games for people to buy games, and to get it back around to Konami. If all you release is a Metal Gear game every 2 years and a soccer game every year, that's at least by most metrics not as good as FIFA, and no, they don't have near the money that EA does to make new features. It's like, of course your profits are going to go down.
Hmm.
Like if and again, it could be a case of vocal minority, but there are a lot of people clamoring for, hey, we would really like to legally buy Suikoden 2 on the PlayStation Network or any platform. The fact that that's not available yet blows my mind. I'm like, why would you have this game that exists? And part of it could also be that, again, the localization of Suikoden 2 is very rough. I heard it was very low budget, and they had basically a week to do it or something. The localization is so rough that there are parts of the code in the game that were broken by it. There are these battles. So there's turn-based battles where that's 6 party members. Then there are these duels where it's just your protagonist versus another character, and it plays this super cool music. It's like when you're fighting a major bad guy, and it's like, we're gonna fight to end this war, and it's a really cool cinematic sequence that you're in control of. And then there are these sort of grid-based strategy RPG battles where you're moving your military units around a battlefield to defend something. There are 3 battle themes for the military battles, and 2 of them don't play because the localization was so bad that it glitched the code of the game. And so you fight those battles in silence.
It just couldn't handle it.
The Japanese version has the music playing, but they broke it. That's how rushed it was.
You almost kind of hope that maybe Sony would reach out, like with them doing just like you were saying, really being a company that, at least on the surface, I mean, they want to make a profit, of course, but on the surface, they're going out of their way to give gamers what they want. There's been a lot of conversations about, apparently there's a big thing in December, and they have earth-shattering news. It would not surprise me if it was like the new Red Dead game was a
Oh
PlayStation
man,
4
that'd be great.
exclusive. That they're going out of their way to make gamers happy. I think they need to reach across to some of these companies that kind of don't have it all together, and
And
they're not listening, and be like, "Hey, give it to us. We'll do it.
I
We'll
think
do
they're
it."
they're actually doing that. Like Shahid Kamal and stuff, and a lot of their team is doing that. And I sort of, I have this conversation a lot with my roommate, and I think we talked about it too, Rob. There's the whole think of a grocery store. You go to a grocery store, you buy groceries there every day for the whole time you live somewhere. Years and years you're buying groceries weekly. You're doing tons of business. So you go in one day and the food you bought is rotten. And you take it to the store and they give you a total hassle. They're like, oh, well, you probably ate the food. You didn't bring the food and you just brought the package. And they hassle you. What are you going to do? You're probably going to go to another grocery store.
Hmm.
Is the money they've saved not giving you a free bag of cheese going to make up for the profit they've lost? No. So give them the bag of cheese. It's small. It's not going to make you much money. Or in this case, you're going to lose a little money, but you're going to keep lifetime customer. Extrapolate that to a game company. If all you ever release is Metal Gear every 4 years, that's all you're known for. But if you say, hey, we might take a hit, we might not make a ton of money on this product we're going to release, but it's going to engender goodwill and it's going to make people want to try out our other games, that's good business. And I think a lot of developers, especially Sony, are realizing that no, somebody's not going to buy a new console for, we'll even give Microsoft some credit. Nobody's going to buy a console for Phantom Dust other than me. But if you keep releasing these smaller things that people want to play, eventually it's going to stack up and you're going to result in a situation where it's like, hey, there actually are a ton of games I want to play in this. I'm going to get it. So that's really a roundabout way of me saying I really want them to just do an HD re-release of Suikoden with, just repaint the graphics a little bit and redo the translation and good to go. Maybe that's why it hasn't been released in Virtual Console, because it's so broken. in terms of like there are a lot of bugs and stuff in it, and the translation's bad. Maybe they're secretly plotting to do like they did with Type Zero HD, and like behind the scenes they're working on doing a gorgeous new repaint of the game
It's
with a great
Konami.
translation.
It's
It's
Konami.
Konami, but on the other hand, well, Sony could reach out and say, "Hey, let's go ahead and get this as a digital thing," because that's the kind of thing that maybe old hats will probably buy a console for a new Suikoden 2, and I mean, I already have the console, but you release an HD Suikoden 2 on your Vita and PS4. The Vita now has another basically Triple H JRPG that everybody already loves, much like Persona 4. And B, you have another one of those things that people go, this is another notch in the belt of I'm going to get this product. Do you
It's
want to?
Konami. It's Konami.
Well, it
I,
is
I I
Konami,
I
but
totally agree with you. I would love it, but Konami just really, man, Konami used to be just one of my favorite developers, and they are just a mess right now. I mean, they're where I felt Square Enix was 3 years ago.
and that's the thing. Square Enix turned it around, and it took a little time, took a little working with other companies, and
Right.
that's people want their companies to stay in business. So at some point, maybe they'll just fire the CEO and hire somebody who's not got to get my COD money.
Yeah, and of course, some a listener is going to point out something like PT, Silent Hills. That's great, but that is still a concept. Like that is a nothing right now. It is not.
That's it's very cool, but it's also not at all deviating from what they do. They have Hideo Kojima and a major Hollywood director working on it.
Yep.
That's a clear attempt to go, hey, Call of Duty money. Look at check it out, bro. We got a cool horror game.
Right.
Like that is, and again, I think it's going to result in something cool. PT is awesome. I like Kojima. I like Guillermo del Toro, and those are all things that I do like. But that is not them reaching out of their safety zone. That's them going, all right, well, have Kojima make another thing.
Yeah, and Bloodborne is not going to sell Call of Duty numbers, but Sony knows that that's the kind of game that is going to get some hardcore gamers that are maybe holding out. Having this exclusive game from Software that people love, another successor to the Souls games, that's going to get people to buy your console. Like they
Yeah,
understand that. It's not going to be a 6 million seller, most
it's not going to be
likely.
one game at all.
No,
And I think you make a good point there. One game does not sell consoles anymore.
right.
Sunset Overdrive looks awesome. I'm not going to buy an Xbox One for it. I really want to play it, but I'm not going to buy an Xbox One for it. If somehow Phantom Dust 50, like 2 through 50 come out on that, then yes, I'm going to buy it because I want them all.
So now,
But
why were games like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid 2? Why were those system sellers for us back in the day? I mean, I've
there were
really,
fewer games and consoles didn't cost $400.
I mean,
They were
so the
like
PlayStation,
200,
well,
250.
PlayStation 2 was 300 when it came out. I mean,
But
I,
that's still, again, $400 is not hugely different from 300, but
right. I
costs
think,
have gone up and the options have gone up. So now it's not like you have a Nintendo 64, you have like half an RPG to play and Ocarina of Time, or you buy a PlayStation and you get Final Fantasy 7. So it's like, and I'm not comparing Final Fantasy 7 to Ocarina of Time, but it's one of those things where options were more limited. It was like, do you want to play RPGs? This is the RPG on here. Like that was the RPG, at the
you didn't
time.
like Quest 64?
I wanted to. But that's the thing is I think it just came down to the fact that there were fewer options then. There were
Yeah.
fewer
Yeah,
games
I
that
think that's a really good point.
yeah, like back in the day, one game could make a huge difference. Like Crash Bandicoot was crazy, and now it's like most people probably even heard of it. The Last of Us back in the day, The Last of Us I would have bought a console so hard for, and now it's like I already had the console. I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And like I have friends that wanted to play it, so they would like borrow a PS3 just to play it and then give it back because it's one console.
Hmm.
There are so many games. You get a PC and you now have more games than you could ever hope to play.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost overwhelming.
And communities around each of them too. So it's not like back when we were a little bit younger. And I'm sorry to pull that card, but you get on GameFAQs and you talk about the one game you've been playing this month because that's the big RPG release for this quarter. There were obviously smaller games too, and there were the games that we might have missed out on. But by and large, there was like one game every so often. There was a Resident Evil every couple of years. Now it's like there's like 50 horror games a month.
Hmm. Well,
And that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. I love having more options. But it also means that one name is not going to carry the weight that it used to.
I agree with that. I agree with
Like,
that.
even look at Call of Duty. People have been trying to knock it off of its throne for years. They've been trying and trying. And while maybe they're never going to do the Call of Duty sales, they are going to flood that market with tons of shooters. And eventually, one shooter is not going to sell a console. I would be shocked if a Call of Duty sold an Xbox One
Yeah. Well,
because it's available elsewhere. And if that one, there's 5 other Call of Duties you could play.
we really got Steven started here. He just like you went into rant mode. It was kind of cool.
Well, I wasn't ranting. I was just trying to make a point.
A little bit of a rant. All right, why don't you take us into news, big guy? Because I'm getting tired and I got stuff to do.
All right. So, first bit of news is that I am super cool. That's all I got.
That's because you weren't ready, was it?
No, I'm actually very ready. So we already talked about it, but Terra Battle's out now. It's free, iOS and Android. Grid-based sort of puzzle RPG, strategy RPG combat. Really fun, free, no risk if you try it out. And you can definitely progress in the game without paying any money and without, grinding for 300 hours, because that's how some of these games tend to run. I would recommend trying it out. It's gorgeous, and if you don't like it, it costs you nothing. You delete it. But yeah, pretty cool. And if you play it before November 3rd, you'll get a special character who is sort of an ancient knight who's also a healer and has a big belly, which is a great character combination. Because they're like, he's a great knight, but he also really likes to eat. And I'm like, that's my jam right there. Following that, a story by Robert Steinman. The new Harvest Moon that's not a Harvest Moon will be out. No, wait, sorry.
This is the Harvest Moon that is a Harvest Moon made by not Harvest Moon people.
This is the Harvest Moon not made by the people who have been localizing Harvest Moon. So this is the one that can be called Harvest Moon. But in any case, The Lost Valley is out on November 4th. That's a 3DS title. It's coming out in North America on November 4th. It's Harvest Moon. If I understand, I think this one has some sort of ability to rebuild the world. I don't know the extent of that. Rob wrote in a Minecraft-like fashion. But if you're excited for Harvest Moon that is Harvest Moon and isn't not Harvest Moon, then this is the one that's not a Harvest Moon, but it's called Harvest Moon. The other one by Xseed is Story of Seasons. That's the Harvest Moon that's not called Harvest Moon because they can't call it Harvest Moon.
Stop saying Harvest Moon.
I wanted to. Stop saying good, Sean. You sound like an ass. They just yesterday, this is big news for me. I'm very excited. They just announced that Final Fantasy XIV's first expansion, Heavensward, will be coming out. It's going to be adding tons of new primals. Purportedly, it is going to be bigger than the relaunched game was when it came out, which is huge. But there'll be, new boss battles, an entire new region called Ishgard, which is sort of, in my mind, patterned after the world of Ivalice. It's the coolest looking country that's currently in the game. You can go to one town from it. But that whole area is going to open up. It's going to be a lot darker in plot than the last one. And they sort of shown that it's very like religious and political maneuvering type stuff. It's going to be adding multiple new jobs. The developer went on record, Naoki Yoshida. They were like, what are some of the new jobs going to be? Well, you have to wait until the next event. But he said, I was really going to wear a Batman shirt tonight. I'm a big fan of Chris Nolan's films. So they've pretty much all but confirmed that Dark Knight is one of the new classes.
I'm in.
It looks great. This is sort of the snowbound region. It's going to be adding floating islands. Free companies will be able to buy their own airships and fly to these new floating areas.
You're still playing Final Fantasy 14 quite a bit, aren't you?
I'm not. I haven't had the time. I'm actually going to get back into it now, though, because the other bit of news is that the next major content patch now comes out on October 28th, which was literally announced moments ago. We have some folks at the Fan Fest right now that are reporting on it. So that new patch adds the major primal battle with Shiva. It's going to add a bunch of other stuff, a new dungeon, several new dungeons, hard modes, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be adding basically, it's a giant patch from Final Fantasy XIV. We know how these work at this point. Tons of new stuff. It's a great game that it's well supported. They announced an expansion as these patches are coming out. So good times. You'll be able to fight Ultros in the new patch, Ultros and Typhon. And it has a remix of the Final Fantasy VI boss theme, which is all we've ever wanted. And the people there say it's great, but I haven't heard it and I hate them. But yeah, so Final Fantasy XIV is still going strong. The expansion looks great. We'll have plenty of screenshots and stuff probably in the next couple of days. And by the time this is up, I'm sure it'll be available. What else we got? So speaking of the Final Fantasy Explorers just got 2 new jobs, Red Mage and Machinist. One of them is a terrifying movie featuring Christian Bale. The other one is one of my favorite Final Fantasy classes.
Wow.
Red Mage is cool. So yeah, FF Explorers is looking pretty rad. It seems Diablo / Monster Hunter / Phantasy Stars, hoping a little more on the former and the latter and not the one in the middle. But yeah, tons of jobs and looks cool. And I believe that's coming out December 18th in Japan, although I think that was already announced.
No word on a U.S. release date.
No word, but we'll get it. Square Enix likes money, and we like
Well,
Final Fantasy, so.
well, that's the thing. They like Final Fantasy, and they like to bring over Final Fantasy. It's Dragon Quest VII that we want.
Well, we want
Damn
good
it!
games. We don't want boring, generic games.
Oh
Sorry, I'm
my
just kidding.
God,
I've
you
never
and
played
the
7.
hatred of the whimsy.
No,
Oh
I'm
my
just
God.
kidding. I've actually heard 7 is really good. I keep meaning to give Dragon Quest another shot because my tastes have changed. Because
Didn't
I
you
hate.
like 8?
I thought he was. I thought 8 was the PS2 one, right?
Yeah, that game's fantastic.
So I played it and I loved the world map and stuff. Then I got incredibly bored. I think it's partially just because I absolutely hate the character designs. I just despise Akira Toriyama's design.
That's fine. You can just hate everything about my childhood. That's fine.
I'm gonna give them another chance. Actually, it's like Suikoden. Like I didn't like 3, but at the time I was sort of younger and
All
I
of
was really into
all
the
of the enemies
flashy.
are puns.
I was really into like the flashy Final Fantasy sort of melodrama, and I still like that, but I think I have a little more acceptance now for games that are like character based or a little more, not directed at being this grand epic Latin choir fighting an angels
Well,
thing. So I'm gonna give him another shot at some point because I've been just adoring Suikoden.
just play 8 because I think 8 is just absolutely fantastic. But
I
that's
did
just
enjoy 8 a lot.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
I
have
guess
enjoyed. Didn't really like many of the other ones, but
I do like enemy with pun names, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. You will love this game.
Jumping to another classic JRPG series, Pokemon. You can get a shiny Gengar now at GameStop in Pokemon X and Y. It's available till October 26th. He's
Shiny.
capable of a Mega Evolution. I don't know what any of that means. You can. Oh, I see. If you transfer it to the new Pokemons, gotcha. So yeah, go to GameStop, get your shiny Gengar. I remember Gengar. He was terrifying.
Shiny
He's in the
Gengar.
Pokemon rap.
Aww.
Apparently, there is an enhanced version of Atelier Eska and Logi, Alchemist of the Death Sky, coming to Japan in January. Odds are pretty good we'll get it. We got all the other ones lately, I think, and it's coming to the Vita. So, yeah, it's coming to Vita. We'll get it. Not announced, but we'll definitely get it. And so that's coming out January 22nd in Japan. And again, I mentioned this already, but there's the Final Fantasy 14 patch. We have a trailer on the site, and I'm sure you can find it anywhere else, but go to RPG Fan because you love us the most. Speaking of Pokemons, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire have a bunch of new Mega Pokemon coming in it, but very cool. There's a new ability. I'm guessing it's given by like an HM or something. It's called Soar, which lets you fly above the region. So I think for the first time in the series, you can actually see a world map in the Pokemon series. Based on the video and screenshots I've seen of it, it's probably not enough to get me to play Pokemon again, but I think it looks rad, and I'm sure people playing will really dig on that. It's sort of we love world maps. Well, some of us do. I think they're great. But yeah, so you'll be able to give a Pokemon the ability to soar and fly around the world. And this is the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, Omega and Alpha, and that'll be coming out November 21st, which I believe is already announced. But again, exciting. You can fly around. And so throw a bone to Kyle here. The Witcher 3 opening cinematic will be debuting, or is it already debuted? October 24th at approximately 15:45 British summertime. So I don't know what that means, but whatever. October 24th, new cutscene from The Witcher. The opening cutscene, in fact. It'll probably be awesome because the ones in 1 and 2 were awesome. And The Witcher 3 will probably also be awesome. There's a teaser site, so just go ahead and check out the teaser site if you want to watch the intro to Witcher 3 on October 24th.
Currently 11:08 p.m. British summertime. So this means that, let's see, what time
He's
did you
gonna
say?
do the math. He's gonna do the math in his head, guys.
I'm not going to do the math. I can't.
What time did you say it was gonna?
15:45.
Oh shit.
You're gonna be fine, Kyle. You're gonna be fine. He's just so
Okay.
excited. He's
Can you
just
figure
so
that out for me, Rob? You're good at math.
I'm not gonna do math right now. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing for dinner with my wife as we sit here and try to record this.
So while you guys math it up, I will also point out that I think it's worth mentioning that Gabriel Knight 20th Anniversary Edition is now out. Our own Dave Yeager reviewed it. That's by Phoenix Online Studios and the original creator of Gabriel Knight, Jane Jensen. They've enjoyed a cozy working relationship lately, have been doing lots of adventure games. Gabriel Knight's one of the all-time best games ever, and adventure games. It's super cool. He's no longer voiced by Tim Curry, but it's a pretty cool game. You can check out Dave's review, or you can go buy the game, because odds are, if you like Gabriel Knight, you already decided if you're going to buy it. If you didn't know about it, go check it out. Tales of Hearts R will come with extra costumes if you pre-order it. They are, as per the standard with the series, they are costumes culled from other characters in other games in the series. What else we got here? Another Atelier game, Atelier Aisha Plus, is heading to Europe next year.
Didn't I write up all these news stories? I should know all this.
Yeah, you did write them all up, which makes it funnier that I'm reading them.
Well,
And I'm sort of just glossing them now, but just to get them all mentioned.
10:45 a.m.
10:45, got it. But yeah, that's what I got for news.
cool, 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 cool.
Oh yeah, last thing, Ace Attorney Trilogy is coming out in December.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be good. I'm probably gonna pick that up. I played the first one, and I want to play the other. I wonder if they'll let you play the other two, or if they're gonna do a stupid thing where you have to unlock them one at a time.
I highly doubt that.
I really hope they don't do that.
They
Oh,
didn't do that with the Devil May Cry trilogy.
yeah, that's true. Okay, that'll be cool.
That's out December 9th in North America. I've never played them. I'm told that I'm a fool for not having played them, given that I like puns, wordplay, and adventure games. I own the first one on DS, haven't touched it, but I think I'll probably just pick this up and play them all with pretty new graphics.
Cool. And Steven will have lots to talk about pretty soon. I don't think we can say exactly where he's going, but he's gonna go look at a game pretty soon. And I
Go
can't
look at
wait
a game pretty soon. We'll probably podcast right when I get back. I'll actually be going to look at a game next weekend.
Yep. We
A
won't.
major upcoming RPG, which was mentioned on the show, but you don't know which one.
Yep. I apologize that we can't talk about the game right now, but I think we will be able to soon.
It's not The Witcher, because if it was The Witcher, I would be going.
Yeah,
That's
basically.
You can probably deduce that.
Yeah.
But journalistic ethics, corruption, blah 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 blah.
Oh, don't start. I just think that Kyle would have slit my throat if it was Witcher. So it's not.
I would not have attempted to take a look at this game if it were The Witcher, because that's Kyle's thing. We go to E3, nobody asks to go see The Witcher. We just assume Kyle's going, and someone might be fortunate enough to go along with him.
It's like, please, sir, can I go with you? I feel the same way. Like if there's a Bloodborne event, that's the one I'm going to, because we have to send the one person who can apparently play these things. And no, I'm not playing the third DLC. I'm not doing it.
You probably should, Rob, because nobody else can play it.
Yeah, you're the only person who can review it, and we really need to review. People are counting on you.
Oh my god!
People are actually counting on you.
If somebody
man.
buys me a PlayStation 4, I'll do it. How about
I'm
that?
not going to buy you a PlayStation 4.
Just for that review. That's what it should be.
We bought you a 3DS.
I have to buy myself one first.
All right. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. We want to do another section of reader or listener mail at some point, so be sure to start giving us ideas either on the iTunes thread or on our own podcast boards. Be sure to give us ratings on iTunes. I would love to get us to 100 reviews by the end of the year, but we also have to be realistic about these things.
Yeah,
so
200 easily.
Yep, for Steven and Kyle, and Derek will hopefully be back with us at some point. Thanks for listening, and we will see you all later.